Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Srikanth, joined by my co-host, Bob. Hey, Bob, thanks for being on.
Hey Cam, glad to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So this week, we're pretty excited to talk about a topic that I will say over the past couple of years has caused me personally and a lot of people that I've had discussions with a lot of confusion, right? And that is SRE. Exactly what is SRE? Is it a part of DevOps? Is it a framework? Is it a set of practices? And oftentimes, while people have a general understanding of what it is, we find that the concept becomes very commonly muddled, very frequently muddled. Bob, is that your experience as well as this concept of kind of reliability engineering starts to play a big role in applications?
Yeah, we're hearing it a lot. I'm hearing it much more these days. But yeah, but there's also kind of it seems relatively new, and it has is not that widespread. I would say with the people
Mhm.
I'm talking to. But yeah, what else,
Yeah.
Cam?
Absolutely. So really, one of the interesting things that while going down the rabbit hole with SRE that I came across was where it came from, right? Obviously, the concept of DevOps has been around for a while and arose from a need for consistent development without necessarily slowing down that pipeline there. And so I went through and tried to find out what exactly was the origin point of site reliability engineering. And it was created at Google by an engineer named Benjamin Trainer. And he founded a team of effectively the first team of SREs back in 2003. And that was the initiation of that framework. And I really love how he describes it. There's a quote coming from Benjamin Trainer stating that SRE is what happens when you take a software engineer and task them with what used to be called operations. And I think that because operations is such a widespread scope within the IT ecosystem, that being able to pinpoint at least the direction in which those engineers are headed, that really gives us a more big picture perspective rather than the requirements that one SRE faces from day to day, right? What is the practice as a whole? So I thought that was pretty interesting.
So how is it? So it sounds a lot like DevOps, right? We're hearing a lot of similarities. What? How is this very different from DevOps?
Yeah, absolutely. So I like to think of DevOps as a framework. The way that one organization implements DevOps is never going to be identical to the way another organization implements DevOps. But DevOps is this framework that allows you, or paradigm that allows you to remove operational silos between dev, between support, between security, between operations. And that way, more releases, more deployments can be made without necessarily having to stop at each step across the way. And it's more of a collaborative initiative to push things through faster, which is great. But while DevOps exists as a framework that's a bit more strategic and high level and can be implemented from organization to organization differently, SRE is really a vehicle to get you to that end goal, right? If DevOps has successfully implemented DevOps as the end goal, SRE is the car that you're driving in to get you there because it's a set of tactical initiatives. In the case that we're talking about setting up proper monitoring, proper flow of data from system to system, these are all constituent attributes or processes within that DevOps framework that allow DevOps to operate seamlessly. Does that make
So,
sense?
yeah. So so what about incident response or even knock teams? Where do they fit in? Where do those things fit in with SRE?
Yeah, and I've heard quite a bit. What does SRE mean for NUC? Are we going to completely uproot the way that we're doing things, monitoring our existing ecosystem? Or do we have to completely change our teams and swap them out? But and I think that that fear is because of a new terminology. A new terminology comes into play. Is it a new technology? Is it a new best practice framework that we must follow? And I understandably that fear exists because organizations are worried about what change they would need to implement, but ultimately knock isn't going anywhere, right? Technology as well as digital transformation has effectively made instant gratification the status quo. If I can't click buy now on Amazon, I'm not going to buy on Amazon. I'm buying on Walmart, and we've had this discussion where people want things and people want things now. So the concept of reactively addressing incidents as is oftentimes done with a knock prior to a major incident. So once something happens, we're going to go through the process of analyzing and correcting it. That is the piece that will change with SRE. It's an unsustainable model, especially with the level of immediacy that's required in today's cloud environment. It's not good enough, simply put, to fix stuff when it breaks. When someone's watching Netflix and they're not satisfied that their show's not loading, they're gone. So an SRE model heavily emphasizes monitoring, not just from a standpoint of ensuring performance is adequately running for the status quo, but also measuring indicators that would give you some level of semblance of an incident that could occur, right? Moving from reactive to proactive response so that you can address an issue before it becomes an issue. So while knock and the concept of a knock is not going anywhere, the way that they monitor and the way that they respond to certain signals is going to shift to a more proactive approach than reactive today.
So, okay, so then they're looking maybe at different signals, or they're looking for signals maybe a little bit earlier, right? Signals that could be indicating something that could be severe or even unacceptable, right? Because there's a difference between breaking and acceptable performance, right? And it seems like SRE then is, rather than fix it and forget it, fix it and then go back and stop it from happening again, right?
Yeah.
How can we do that? And how can we model performance better and measure and kind of bake it into the development? Really, because this could all go back to development again and proper testing and simulations and things like that. But developers are focused, on delivering, and that's what DevOps is, right? It's meeting a business need to deliver more value more quickly, and it works. But now SRE is a way to kind of, and imagine this coming from Google, as it were. I
Yeah.
mean, Google is, they've got to make sure those searches come back as quickly as possible, and they do a great job. So it's not just things breaking, but things running and running well and delivering what they're supposed to deliver.
Yeah, 100%. And I completely agree with that, right? It's less that just things break, but I really liked what you said just about performance, right? Just because something's working doesn't mean it's working the best that it otherwise can be or providing the best experience. So I think that SRE, even more so than DevOps, augments an organization cater to their customers' expectations.
Sure, customer experience monitoring is another thing. Even then, you can put sensors in place to figure out what's going on before the customers find out.
And I think that one thing that is fairly important when I had started this level of research is why SRE is important. And I think that we kind of touched on it, right? Monitoring is key to an IT organization, right? It's fundamental to business processes operating smoothly and identifying and rectifying any issues as and when they occur. But the key is that proactivity piece, right? The key that SRE starts to facilitate is along the lines of what you had mentioned, where it's about experience. It's about the end user, right? It's not just where in DevOps we receive a feature request or there is a bug and then there is a deployment fixing that bug, and that happens 8 or 9 times a day. Sure, that's great, but can we get that to a point that we're only deploying 5 times a day? Right, because we have these indicators presented to us and in a proactive manner, right? Rather than putting something out, recognizing its flaws, coming back and putting out another thing. How do we condense the number of deployments so most acutely caters the requirements of the broader user base. So I definitely think that the experience aspect of site reliability engineering is going to be one of the biggest drivers in its adoption throughout DevOps frameworks, NOC teams, and IT as a whole. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone. Until the next one. Thanks, Bob.